To go back to one of something you said very early on,
Okay.
which is something in your childhood. You used to love amphibians and reptiles.
I still love amphibians and reptiles, yes.
I don't understand that. Why? Like lizards?
Yeah.
Why?
Why? Why do I love my husband? I can't really name like reasons for why I do. I do. I just compared loving my husband to loving frogs. But anyway, I really love frogs. I think, and snakes, right? I think it's a fascination with something which was so mysterious to me, and in many ways it's still very mysterious to me. When I saw just the diversity of amphibian species that we have in Singapore, right, that it's just the consideration of the beauty, right, that frogs have, right, the fact that like they are such excellent indicators of the health of a system, right, because they are both on land and in water, right, and it's just I don't know how to explain how much I love frogs, but I just really love frogs. And I spent most of my NUS life, right, from year 2 to year 4 out in Singapore's forests, basically trying to figure out the conservation status of an endangered frog species, which is right over here. That's the Malayan horned frog.
You can buy it.
You can't buy the frog, you can buy the book and admire the frog. So I really wanted the frog to have a prominent space on the book. Yeah, I think I'm fascinated when I see many of these animals, and I suppose it's not just frogs and snakes. I'm also fascinated by like spiders and birds and many other things, right? I'm just fascinated at the intricacy that God has in His creation, and just the kind of thought that has gone into creating, right? I mean, like take the frog for example. You remarked that it looks grumpy, and it does, right? It looks quite grumpy. It has these protrusions above its head, right, that allows it to camouflage onto the forest floor. So a lot of my time in university was spent trying to find this frog to begin with because it's so well camouflaged, right? And it's just noticing these aspects of creation that's just remarkable, yeah.
Wow. So you talk about the features of the animals.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much admiring intelligent design, isn't it?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, so it gives us that marveling this intelligent design gives us an awe of God's creation.
Yeah, I think it gives me some sort of insight into God's character, and I don't know whether that is something that like I would kind of imagine Job went through as God was talking to him, and God was just like basically almost attacking Job, right, with all this like, have you been there, have you seen this, have you noticed this, and it's kind of revealing like God's done all these fantastic things. Like, what is really our image of God? Like, who really do we see God as? Yeah.
Wow. And that reminds me of how like the Psalms and the Proverbs sometimes refer to animals.
Yeah, that's
like
right.
talking about grasshoppers and like ants,
Yes.
the hardworking ants. Yeah, in which we get some children's storybooks from, right?
Yeah.
So we do learn things from animals by just having the time to space out and to just appreciate what's out there, you know.
You said something quite critical. You said we're able to learn from the animals, right? And
Yeah.
you are basically echoing Jesus's words, right? In Matthew 6, right, when he talks about look at the birds of the air, right? Look at the flowers of the field, right? Look at the grass. Like, he's basically asking us to look at the created world and how it sings of God's providence, right? And how God's actively sustaining the created world. And that word learn, right, it's like Martin Luther actually uses the term schoolmaster. Like he says the created world are our schoolmasters in talking about, in teaching us about who God is and how he provides. And that's really something worth pondering. Yeah.
Wow, I guess perhaps we really should, you know. Yeah. So I think I'd like to move on to a concept which we are working on, which is what you call contemplative ecology, right? Which is trying to reclaim this aspect of Jesus' command, you know, to look, right, at the created world and to glean God's wisdom that is already embedded in His creation from the beginning of time, right? Maybe you can share with us a bit more about this contemplative ecology idea.
Yeah, I think I must preface this by saying that the term contemplative ecology, I think it was coined by the guy who wrote the book of which we currently have a book club on. It's called Blue Sapphire of the Mind, Contemplative Ecology. And it's by a guy called Douglas Christie. And basically a group of us are kind of going through this book every Saturday morning, right, at 9:30. Anyone's free to join us, so please feel free. And we're basically trying to understand how engaging with ecological realities, right, or engaging in ecological concerns should be very much rooted in contemplative tradition. I think that's the thrust of his idea. And it's an important one because what we are beginning, or what I guess scientists have seen for a very long time, is addressing climate issues, addressing biodiversity loss issues, right, is not primarily addressed through trying to do as much science as possible, right? But it really comes down actually to people and their habits and their behaviors. And that's very much rooted in their belief systems and in their spirituality and in what they understand about who they are within this world. And I think contemplative ecology is a means of trying to address that. Yeah, I hope that made sense. It's still a new idea to me to some extent. I'm still trying to understand what it means to consider ecology more spiritually, right? But obviously these things are interlinked. Yeah.
Right, can you share with us a bit more about how we can practice contemplation?
Yes, you can ask me, but I may not be giving you the best response. I think one step it begins by perhaps pausing, right? To actually to try and be still or quiet, right? And to be more aware of or conscious of where you are, how you are, right? That means being connected to your emotions, who you are, right? Reminding yourself that you're not defined by the world, right? But you are the beloved child of God. And even when you are. So actually having this idea of that you are not in isolation, right? But you exist in a long tradition of human beings, right? Who have made their place within the world, right? So this idea of placed and placedness, right? Embodiedness. I think that is quite important to how I've begun to see contemplation, right? And I think it is also important to, in the context of caring for creation, it is important to pay attention to what is around us. So to actually pause and see, right? Pause and hear, pause and taste. And so that slowing down, as you mentioned earlier, which is really the last chapter, the afterword of our book, right? Craig Ziming writes about the importance of Sabbath, right? And Sabbath is also about slowing down. It is about ceasing, right? And so I think that's helpful to think about within contemplation. Yeah. So pausing, right? Paying attention, perhaps also praying, right? So actually conversing with God about yourself, about life, about just marveling, just speaking to Him, maybe not in terms of petition, but just speaking, right? Praising. I think that could also be part of contemplative tradition, yeah.
Right. I'd like to ask you about creation care and about the world's approach to environmentalism. Do you think there's a distinctiveness? Is there any similarity there?
Yeah, definitely. And I think conversely, right, our poor response to caring for the earth is a poor witness. So I think something that has been very formative for me, an experience that's been very formative for me in this whole journey, is when I was in university in my final year, right? I was in a lab And a lot of the folks in the lab, they were great folks, right? They were good folks who were doing very good work in science and in biodiversity and in conservation. And most of them were not Christian. And I still remember that I had a conversation with one of my friends, right, who was a partner with me in some ways in talking about biodiversity and stuff. And he was like, you Christians, you know, you meet like every Sunday for church. And after service, you have like your fellowship meals. And your fellowship meals are like packaged in styrofoam. If you just imagine one church with about 400 people, 400 packets being thrown away at the end of a service. Just multiply that by the number of churches that there are across Singapore who do this, right? You multiply that by the number of weeks that you meet, right? Just how much waste have you generated? I think the vehemence in which he said that, right, shook me, because it was something that I never thought about. The fact that what we do with God's good resources, with God's good creation, is actually seen and watched by those around us, right? And so if I want to talk to my friend then about how Jesus Christ died on the cross for him, or about how Jesus loves the earth, right, and Jesus cares and Jesus died for the whole world, he'll be like, really? Do you even show that, like, by your witness? I mean, maybe not mine specifically, but like the church's witness. And so I think we need to be conscious of this idea of witnessing, right? This being a witness, right? That it goes beyond speech, right? And how we live actually really matters. And so caring for creation, therefore our response and our love, and not just in terms of like not using styrofoam, but also our appreciation, right? Our concern, therefore reflects to non-believers, right? To the rest of the world, that yeah, we care, and we're not just people who are singing songs and reading the Bible and always thinking about going to heaven when we die, right? We're people who are trying to make sense of what it means to be human within the created world. Yeah.
I think